right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Lori and Catherine, Angel, Sandy, and Karen, and Jason is going to be jumping on here any moment. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about the book Love, Life, God by Jarrad Hewett, and we're going to be continuing our discussion talking about chapter 6. Previously, we've discussed quite a bit in this book. And, last week we were talking about ascension versus expansion and kind of this idea of, letting go of the idea of that there's somewhere to ascend to and that we're already here. And so that was a really interesting discussion. If you'd like to get in on that, then you can just, find our replays either in our Facebook group or on the YouTube channel, whichever. Just search for Mindset Mastery Collective.com, and that will take you to a link you can find your way into our Facebook group and find all our replays. But before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get talking on this whole idea of chapter 6. So, okay, jump out.
Good morning, Lori here from Denver, snowy and cold.
Good morning, it's Catherine from Shawnee, Oklahoma. I see y'all are getting a lot of snow out there, Lori.
This is Angel Studebaker down in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's going to be pretty warm today. I'm pretty excited.
Good morning, Sandy Root here, literally on Miami Beach, as you can see, 82 today. I got my times mixed up this morning, so here I am on the beach. Happy to see you all again. It's been a while since I've been on, so yay.
We're all jelly over here. Hey Samantha, hey Catherine, hey Angel, hey Karen, hey Sandy, Lori. Great to be here. Jason Robertson, Tampa Bay, Florida.
Sandy, really good to see you, even though you're making us all envious. I'm Karen Loha from, I live in Mesa, Arizona, and it's warm here, pretty blue sky. Nice day already.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about chapter 6. And in chapter 6, the main points of this chapter starts out talking about the Big Bang versus the Big Desire, and then moves into discussing this idea of multidimensionality, which is just a really fascinating concept that they're getting into. But I want to go ahead and just kind of read a little bit here at the beginning of the chapter, where they're talking about their idea of, the Big Bang aspect. So it says, the universe did not start as some theorize in a giant Big Bang. Rather, it started with the big desire. It started with the desire by source to experience itself in a new way. There was desire to experience the self. Your universe formed and took shape as a place of great potential, through the one's desire to experience itself in individualized form. As gases collided and particles expanded, there was a great unfolding that took place, and in this unfolding, there was the continual desire for experience, for growth, and for expansion. Thus, the story of creation, the template for all that is, including the human race. And so this is a really interesting concept. Of course, it almost is like, okay, we start out, or not everybody, but a lot of people that I've known start out with this learning about how everything began from the Bible as a creation thing, and that God created. And then as I got older, I started learning more about science and scientific exploration and space and all of that kind of thing, and the history of the universe and whatnot. And they have this idea of the Big Bang. And so then when I'm reading this, I'm getting this impression that it's almost like coming back around to the God aspect of it. So if we're looking at it in that way, that God is the one that initiated the Big Bang per se, then that kind of is it's a melding of these ideas between religion and then science. So that's just a really interesting concept. But I like the idea of of God just, thinking us all into existence, if you will, versus the original creation story we were always taught it happened in 7 days. And of course, what is a day in terms of God's days? I mean, that could be like millions of years as far as we know. I mean, who knows? And, if he thought us into existence, and in the previous chapters, it talks about the fact that we are part of God and that things that we think about we can create, then that's an interesting concept too. So what do you guys think about this idea?
Oh, darn, I didn't know I was unmuted. Probably been making a lot of noise.
No, you haven't. I just now started hearing you when I was quiet. Then I can hear you.
I have never been happy, or, like the Big Bang Theory just has never held much water for me. And maybe it's just because I don't understand it or something, but pretty much, I mean, if I didn't realize how amazing everything was before nursing school, when I started studying the body and learning about all the different processes in the body, that, how much of it is just completely automatic and we don't have any, just the processes that go on with it inside of one cell is for me too intricate, and it works too well for a bunch of rocks to just have collided and resulted in that. Like, the beauty of the world and the fractals, the repeatable patterns that we see, to me, that doesn't come from just some rocks slamming into each other, that kind of perfection. So I'm happy for another option.
Speaking of another option, when I first started to read this chapter, it reminded me that last night I had kind of been watching what my roommate was watching on her TV. I was watching a movie on my computer over here, but she likes to watch, the ghost type things, where the houses are haunted or different places are haunted. And for whatever reason, maybe it was because there was a house that made me think of the house that I grew up in until third grade. I thought about, I've never understood why a person would haunt someplace and not move forward. I've done a lot of reading about near-death experiences, and it always seems so beautiful to, move forward. And I was thinking, well, maybe when I was 3, I had an experience that I couldn't work out in my mind, that really have maybe never worked out in my mind. And I kept staying there trying to understand it through the different people who, lived there over the years. I've actually gone back there and asked someone to kind of let me see the house. The house looked like a barn. You know how some houses are built with that roof kind of thing that looks like a barn? And it was curious to me, just the whole idea of everything. Sandy's walking. This is so fun. Anyway, let's see. So I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm a grown-up woman. I'm a really, that's almost 70 years for me, if I was a 3-year-old. And then I'm thinking, well, could I have been there haunting the place, for a long time, banging around, opening the doors, whatever, getting into little bits of trouble. All this time that I was growing up, and I thought, well, maybe there's a piece of my consciousness there trying to iron things out. And anyway, I was kind of going to sleep on that idea. And because of that, and then to read what I read this morning, it gave me a different perspective, I'm sure, than what I would have had if I hadn't thought about that. But this idea of multidimensionality and all of us being able to consider other potentials than what we have, I think it's really fascinating, and something that I mean, if there are people left behind in certain houses, or that travel with certain objects like some teddy bear or whatever, then why couldn't a portion of me be trying to figure things out? I just wonder if that seems like a really crazy idea to anyone else.
Not crazy to me, Karen.
Right. I think we all want to get into the multidimensionality aspect of this talk. But I had one more thought on the Big Bang aspect. And, of course, we've talked about imagination, and I don't know, let me put that off for a minute. But one thought I thought of, Catherine, when you were talking about not believing in the Big Bang, and a thought that I had also when I was watching one of these science movies where it was just an exploration of the massive size of our universe and where they think it all started, et cetera, et cetera. And the thought that I had that came across my mind in opposing view to what your suggestion is of, it can't have just happened randomly, is somebody's got to win the lottery, or it doesn't have to, but someone has to win the lottery, right? If we look at the lottery, there's like a 1 in a, I don't know how many millions of persons chances that you're going to win the lottery, right? And somebody always does. And if we look at the universe on the massive scale that it is, which I think that we can't even fathom how enormous it is and how long we've been floating around in this space, and how much has happened over the millions and millions of years, who's to say that if things don't collide into each other, so many times over that much time, that something miraculous could happen, such as our existence? And so that was kind of a thought that I had, because, when I first started reading about the Big Bang, I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, we couldn't have just banged 2 rocks together and there we are. But yet, we've studied all of these ideas of evolution for all of these years, for, I don't know how many hundreds of years since Darwin came up with the idea, and have explored the fact that it takes millions of years for things to change, to change from one form into another form. It takes a long time for people to evolve from one form into another form, like, from the Neanderthals until what we are now. And, so who's to say that, we aren't just that 1 in a gazillion chance that happened to win the lottery of amazingness, compared to the whole rest of the universe. So, but the universe is so huge, there may be all kinds of different life possibilities out there that have also won the lottery of of amazingness. I mean, who knows? But that was just kind of one thought I had on that. Anybody want to comment on that before we move on?
I like what you're saying. I really appreciate everyone's comments, because it's you know, it's really very you know, eye-opening and deep thinking and stuff like that. I think when you talk about the Big Bang, I think the main thing, or the point about the Big Bang, is trying to figure out, well, how did things create? How did things not how did things evolve, but where did things start? You know, kind of the question of what came first, the chicken or the egg type of thing, and how do we wrap our minds around that? And I think the other side of the Big Bang is the idea that I think one theory is that it's sort of a expansion and contraction type thing, to where you know, it expands. Our universe is expanding, apparently, from their studies, and they think that maybe one day it'll start to contract, and then once it does contract all the way down, then it'll be another Big Bang, and then expand again, kind of a thing. So it's a ongoing process. And then if that's the case, then it's like, well, what created that process in order to, you know, what started that process? And then you can think, well, then that's even more mind-blowing, because not only is there, you know, trillions and billions of stars, and then planets around the stars, and all that, and, you know, but then there's maybe all these trillions and billions of Big Bangs going on. And like you said, though they think there's, you know, they calculate that there's probably another planet that can sustain life, and there's probably life on that planet out there somewhere in our universe. You know, maybe we did win the lottery and we are the only one. So that can't be ruled out either. So it's all very, you know, we're like one little grain of sand, and all the beaches of the world, you know, just a very, you know, just a very, very special place. And so I think we're all winners for being here and having this time to be here and be alive. So I think that's kind of the what I like to bring out of it and think about in regards to that.
I want to read a little section in this chapter. They start talking about multidimensionality, and I'll come back around to that. But there's a section right underneath that where it says, where Jarrad's asking the question, well, you said that gases collide and particles expanded, but what was before that? And then Source says, you are asking how the material elements took shape and where they originated. They came from you. Within your body is infinite space. At the quantum level, none of the particles touch. Solid matter is just an illusion. You've read about that, right? And they're talking about like this theory, and but they're like, you know, it's more than theory. Indeed, beyond atoms, you will find pure vibration, which brings us to the concept of imaging frequency. The technology will come, and you will be able to see the actual formation of matter from vibration and frequency. It says, you asked also what was here before matter, and we are showing you that even now, matter as you think of it does not exist. The formation of your universe came when desire sent out a massive wave of potentiality. It came from the consciousness of the one. The desire created the new space of potential. And then it goes on and talks a little bit more about frequencies were formed and bonded together, and vibrations took shape, and all of that kind of thing. And so it kind of brings us into this idea of imagination and creation, and then it takes us into this idea of multidimensionality. Okay, so the thought that I had with kind of this combination of you know, infinite space and quantum level, and the fact that everything at the quantum level is all in the same field of particles or atoms or whatever it is that it's saying, and that in our physical existence on this macro level, I guess it's not that macro, depending on where you are in the spectrum of micro to macro, but in this macro level, we feel like this is real. You know, we can feel these surfaces and we can feel ourselves and all of that. But if we get down and we examine at the tiny, 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 tiny level, it's all just space with these little particles in it. So then it's like, okay, well, how are we not that, but we are this, but we aren't, we are that, but we aren't, like kind of both. Oh, here, Sandy's trying to get in on our computer. Where was my thought process going? Oh, okay. So then I'm thinking in terms of this desire to experience, and if God had the desire, and we talked before about you know, God just coming here to experience everything, and maybe we're just an aspect of God's desire to experience everything in the human form. If that's the case, maybe there is no necessarily forming like what we think of it as forming. You know, when we talk about forming something, we talk about, you know, I don't know, we'll just send it as an example, a piece of Play-Doh. We've got the solid Play-Doh, and we mold it into a form, and then all of a sudden it's a horse or whatever. And but yet at the same time, on a different level, we can, in our imaginations, create all kinds of interesting things. You know, we can come up with a whole new idea of, you know, a new type of a bridge, or a new type of a vehicle, or a, you know, a whole new different technology, or you know, we can create books and movies and all of these different things that, you know, who's to say that those things aren't any more or less real than what we're experiencing right now. So it makes me sit here and think, okay, well, you know, if that is the case, how am I any different than God? You know, and that's kind of what they're trying to get across, I think, is that, you know, God has this idea in its mind that he wants to have this experience, and so therefore he imagines it, and that it forms into what we feel like is reality. But is it any more real than to God than what we experience, say, in a dream or in our imagination? That's all my thoughts now.
I hope there isn't a world somewhere that is my thoughts. That's all I can say. Like, I really hope that there isn't a world somewhere with people suffering from the shit that I think of.
I totally understand that, Catherine. I thought this group was gonna get me figure all this stuff out, you know, all this circular reasoning and confusion. It's about acceptance of what is, but nothing is formed that wasn't a thought first. And so it makes me wonder, okay, why am I not thinking of some fabulous thing that's going to fix all this? Or spoken into being. And then I have to think, I don't know that I want the responsibility of all that. It's just seems so circular. And how you just find acceptance and just be.
I think vibrations are huge. I think that's a big, like when we was talking about the molecular level, and that's so very true. Vibrations are what is everything's resonating at a different vibration. If you can tune into a frequency, then the idea is that you can affect it. You know, it's like a singer being able to hit that pitch to shatter a glass. They've learned to, with vibrations, to make things levitate, small things with very light things. They've learned to control water, waves with vibrations. You know, there's a experiment they do to kind of show that, you know, solid objects aren't actually solid, and that's where they it was figured out when some gold was left on some wood, and it was left there for a long period of time, and eventually the gold and the wood mixed together, and so they figured out that well, because gold is soft and wood is also soft, the harder the harder things are, the more compact the particles and all that. But yeah, definitely, vibrations and, talking about the creation. And I think in the Bible, it mentions that, God spoke everything into existence. Is that a hint that, our vibrations, our vocal vibrations can actually affect material things? I don't know. But all really good points. Really good points. And the whole point of the thing you were talking about, Karen, with the hauntings, I don't know where all that fits into the scientific, the universal, and even the spiritual or religious aspect of things sometimes. But I watch some of the shows, and it seems to me like there's even like some sort of like spirits can actually have intelligent contacts or reactions. And I actually, one thing I was watching where person was talking about how he was watching TV, and it seemed like whenever he was saying that whenever to him it seemed like whenever a female's voice came on the radio, the lights would start to flicker, or not on the TV. So it's like, to me, it's like, well, hold on, are they in the spirit? If there's a spiritual realm, and I think that's very, very, very possible with all the different evidence that we have. Are they learning? are they learning? Since we're trying to, a lot of people are trying to make connections to help people go over to, pass it on over to the other side, or ascend, or expand, or whatever. Along the way, are they actually able to understand us and maybe even learn? And that kind of creeps me out, because they talk about, how the spirit is able to do this or do that or interact, or it's really powerful. And it's like, well, if the spirit's listening to you and it realizes that it can do all these things, now you're just giving it ideas. So that's, kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but also very interesting. And I think, like you're saying, it seems kind of circular, like you're saying, Lori. But you just gotta, there's got to be some overall connection. It's all got to work together somehow. So, and it's great to talk about it, though, and kind of open your mind to it, and then kind of come back to what we're all working with, and know that maybe it's a lot of it is speaking things into existence, but it's also the pursuit of that thing and calling on all of our surroundings and our friends and our environment and our wisdom, our knowledge, and what we can know, and anything that we have that can help. But that pursuit, as well as speaking it into existence, I really feel we can extend our thoughts, our vibrations, and sort of create a path for the universe to bring things to us. But we've got to meet it halfway. We've got to be there to receive it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, all the discussion so far is making me go down all the rabbit holes I've been down with all this stuff. Because even talking about frequency and vibration, we know that a lot of Tesla technology is all about frequency, and a lot of that was hidden from us. And so it makes me think of how a lot of our history was hidden from us. So is the Big Bang Theory true, or is that a story that was created to hide the real history? I've heard different theories of how this all began. And, I think different
pieces of religion have different theories of how it all started. And and then I hear things of like, this is all a simulation. And then I'm like, what? Like that makes you go to a whole nother realm of like, okay. But I saw this woman this week. She's a channeler, and she was talking about the Oversoul, which is like our soul is overseeing different lives that we're living all at once. And they could be not on Earth, all on Earth. Some could be on Earth, some are on different places, which I believe there are other places, and that we've been to other places. And then even hearing some channelers talk about different beings like the Pleiadians and the Galactic Federation and different beings from different places in the universe. And some of them are here in human bodies helping to bring light to the earth. So, it's like sometimes wondering, well, where did we, where is my body, my soul living elsewhere now too, in some other body? And that our dreams can be like parts of our soul experiencing in a different place, in a different dimension in this current moment. So that's all the places my mind have gone in this conversation. So I sometimes think, yeah, like really, what do we know? And then a lot of the things that we have heard and do hear, like, where did that even come from? Was that made up, or is that to cover up the truth of what because we're so much more powerful than we are living now. And a lot of it's been covered and hidden. So that's, where I'm going at the moment.
Yeah, it really kind of brings out this idea of this multidimensionality, like that it's kind of discussing here. And it says in here, you don't believe it's possible to experience multidimensionality in the physical form, yet physical is just an aspect of the spiritual. You experience everywhere at all times. You are very aware that you travel to other realms during sleep, yet these other realms are just as much a part of your existence as your physically formed being. You have simply limited your physical choices to your perception and thus limited the creation of your physical environment. What we wish to ask of you is that you begin to release the either or, the here, there, the physical, non-physical choice aspect of your creation story. For in doing so, you may come to remember that in order to be God, you do not have to treat yourself as only a part of God. That is to say, you may be it all. And the thought that comes to my mind on that is, when we're talking about dreams, as just an example, is that when we as a human and we have a dream, then after we've had this dream, it becomes a part of us, right? It becomes an aspect of our awareness that we are then, that it is part of us going forward. Okay. And so that's kind of the thought that I'm thinking that they're trying to express to us, is that as if we are the dream of God, then we are just as much a part of God as our dreams are a part of us. And then, but we also can look at the whole nother aspect of, is just this point, because, do we feel like we're real in this moment because this is what we're most focused on? Because we can lose ourselves in a book, or we can lose ourselves in a movie, we can lose ourselves in our imagination and in our dreams, and when we're in those moments, they feel pretty freaking real. I mean, particularly dreams, because if our total consciousness is in this other realm at the same time as our body is here asleep, I mean, how do we know that that isn't just as real as this? I mean, I don't, because it becomes a part of us regardless, and, Catherine, you were talking about, I hope that, some of these thoughts that I have in my head aren't real, but what's to determine real? I mean, there's so many movies out there that are, just horrific movies. And we're just like, oh, we don't think that much of it because it's just a movie. but yet we watch the movie and we have that experience, we have the emotional turmoil that goes along with it, and that then becomes a part of us. And and the same thing happens when we read a amazing book, or we see an inspirational story, or we learn about someone else's experiences. We can actually imagine that experience, and that becomes a part of us. I don't know, it's just really interesting. Last week we were talking in our after party, and for those of you who don't know anything about our after parties, we get on these Saturday Morning Masterminds live, but then when we get done, a lot of times we talk on afterwards. If you want to be a part of that, then obviously you have to join and participate with us. But in our after party last week, we got on this topic of ultimate right or wrong. And I was thinking about that for a minute. With respect to imagination and movies and books and that sort of thing. And we watch a movie and we see a real person who is acting out this horrific thing, who we think, that particular act is so horrifying. And in that moment, it is absolutely horrifying, and we don't want it. We don't, it's awful. And but that, of course, then becomes part of our experience as human, as we've seen that thing. But yet we don't judge that actor as bad, right? That person is just an actor acting out a part. What if God, like us, is all of what we have going on is imagination? If we are God's imagination and we are just actors in this play of life, then does God really judge us for the things that I don't know, wonky thought. Anyway, that I might talk about going down the rabbit hole, but
maybe the rabbit hole is where the answer is somehow. Now I've forgotten what all this brought up for me. The movies, it is so strange that the few months before this pandemic, I was watching this really dumb show called Last Man on Earth, and a virus had killed the entire population. And next thing I know, we're in the pandemic. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. But the whole idea of having the imagination and the dream world, I like my dreams, because in my dreams I am completely able to walk, usually, and climb mountains and stuff. And I wake up and I'm like, dang it, I'm still here with this physical challenge. And why can't I make that into reality, permanent? It's just mind-boggling. Go ahead, someone.
I do think we've covered many, many, many things that are mind-boggling, and just that one sentence that you were reading is a real twister. It says, "At this time, you do not believe that it is possible to experience multidimensionality in the physical form. Yet physical is just an aspect of spiritual." Now that's a mind twister right there, isn't it? Just to try and hold on to what is being said, and which direction it's being said. And then he goes on to say, you exist everywhere at all times. It's kind of easier for me as I think about what I was sharing last week about the I am exercise that someone suggested, that, say I'm here looking out my window and I see the trees, and I know that the leaves are a certain size, a certain shape and fit in a certain way on the tree limb. And I can think about that, but I'm still just doing one thing. Even if I'm kind of thinking about being in that tree, if I follow a bird there and it lands there, and I think, oh, that would be so fun. Laura, you talk about how it would be so nice to be able to walk. And I'm sure that that's so true, because I think about how fun it would be to bounce on a tree limb, just, safe and secure, but having the fun of it. And this is basically saying we're everywhere at the same time. And then I think about how difficult it is for me to focus anymore, to just focus on the simplest things, to just focus on, why I'm headed this direction in the hall, or why I thought I was going to go speak with someone else, or we were talking about how you go into a room and then you forget why you came into the room. And our youngest person, our youngest caregiver, who's 19 years old, she knew that she had read somewhere that when you cross a threshold, when you go through a door, it seems like you're in a different place, and that's why you forget why you went there. And I think, I think my life confuses me so much and causes me to lose focus so many times in the day. I can only imagine, Lori, how frustrating it is for you. I am relieved that we are reading these things, discussing these things, and opening our minds to one another to do that, to go down the rabbit holes, because I'm more peaceable in my regular life. I can read back in my journals and I can see how gnarled up I was so many, many years of my life. I was so angry about this, so frustrated about that, so confused about that. And at least now I have more openness to the ideas that there are as to how things are, how our lives are.
Going back to what you were saying, Jason, about how, it seems that spirits can communicate intelligently. Absolutely, they can. That's the whole foundation of the Soul Phone project, is that they are actually communicating with spirits. Spirits are instructing them on how to build the machinery that's going to allow them to communicate not only through thought, but physically as well. As a matter of fact, when I read that part of this book about how technology is coming where you'll be able to visually see creation, I was wondering if they were referring to the Soul Phone project, because that's basically what they're doing, is they're creating machinery that will be able to allow entities to physically show themselves to anybody, not just people who are sensitive to other dimensions. But I do have to say that, and this is going to crack you guys up, in my quest to learn how to be human, occasionally I watch shows like some of these counseling shows that they have on TV. I can't remember there's a a lady that does one too, but the one I'm referring to right now is Dr. Phil. I watch the Dr. Phil show once in a while, and I find him quite condescending a lot of the time, but I do like learn some things about being human watching that show in a strange kind of way. But it's almost like I'm observing an alien species. That's really what it feels like to me. So I don't know if I'm from one of those planets, Sandy. Like, I'm told I'm Lyran, but I don't know that to be true. Like, I don't have any idea. But what Dr. Phil did say the other day, he had somebody on there that was very much like me, you know, said that she's been talking to God and seeing spirits all of her life. And he basically just told her that she's brain damaged. And you know, she suffered a trauma. I think she was 8 or something, and she had some kind of traumatic experience, and that literally altered her brain chemistry. And so now she just thinks that she talks to God and sees spirits and things. So at least I got myself figured out. I'm just brain damaged. It makes shit a lot easier. You have to figure out if you're from another planet or, you know, you're just brain damaged. It's quite simple. But I would love to see Dr. Phil go to the Soul Phone project, and you know, are the machines there that are picking up the spirits, are they brain damaged as well? Like, I'd like to see Dr. Phil open up. We need to get him on our show, I think.
I definitely know you from somewhere else, Catherine. I don't know where. It's funny, I get readings from a friend sometimes, and the first time she did a reading on me, she's like, "You're from the Crystal Kingdom." And I'm like, it just so resonates. I'm like, yep, that makes sense. I'm from the Crystal Kingdom. But every time she does a reading of me, like my crown chakra is like so like open to something up there, and there's all this light, and then but I'm like sort of at the top of the light, like I'm not here, like my body's here, but there's, I guess, like that part of me that's like way in a different dimension. So it's so interesting, like when you tap into these things, like where really.
Yeah, when they were talking about the technology is going to come that we'll be able to see matter created, of course, the first thing that popped into my head was, you know, Star Trek and their replicators and the transporters and all of that. And I'm like, and then I was like, you know, they kind of have created something similar like that with the 3D printer. You know, it's already starting to come out in that direction. I mean, and even, you know, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that it was unfathomable, this whole idea of even just a printer, you know, or a TV or any of it, you know, way back when, you know, all that would have been thought of as like magic. And you know, we're just not that far off from just amazing technological advances that are, you know, making things possible that we never even fathomed as possible. And yeah, I think it would be interesting. I haven't watched Dr. Phil very often, and the couple little blips that I've gotten from him is that kind of that same idea of the condescending, you know, better than thou and whatever, and just trying to make people think they're crazy, which is just boggles my mind. And you know, here he's like the one that, you know, teaches you to how to be the conforming human, you know. But I feel like even humanity is expanding. Well, here we are. We're talking about this book that tells us we need to be expanding, and as humanity, we're expanding our ideas of what is, and that, you know, what we thought was may not be what actually is, and what we think is now may not be actually what is, you know, 100 years from now. I mean, who knows? So it's definitely really interesting. But then at the same time, you know, I come back around to this idea of like, okay, well, if we are just God's imagination, you know, what's the point? You know, I was watching a movie last night called Palm Springs. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's relatively new. I can't remember what channel it's on, maybe Hulu. And it's similar to like a Groundhog's Day movie where the guy gets trapped in this looping time loop kind of a thing. And you know, it's one day just keeps reliving over and over and over and over again. And it kind of reminded me of, you know, kind of our human existence in a way. The only difference is that, you know, everything was taken care of. He didn't have to worry about paying bills and, you know, finding food and all of that because he was at a wedding venue. And so every day he woke up and it was the wedding and there was always food and drink and whatever else available. And, you know, he was at a resort, so he just had a hotel room that was taken care of and all of that. And it was just this whole kind of questioning of, I feel like the premise of the movie was kind of questioning our reality, like we tend to do. Like, what's the point? You know, if we're just here just for the sake of being here, what are we doing? You know, and sometimes I wake up in the morning, you know, like this time of the year when we're in hibernation mode is kind of what I call it, because we don't have a lot going on. And I'm like, what do I want to do right now? You know, and what purpose is there in it? And I don't know, it's interesting. I have this whole questioning of that, of, you know, if we are just imagination, what would I do really? And of course in that movie he was like, you know, just does all kinds of crazy stuff, you know, like knocks people's hats off their heads, and you know, of course if he dies then he just starts back over again, so he tries to kill himself a bunch of times, you know, just like Groundhog's Day, it with, you know, Bill Murray. And you know, and of course in Bill Murray's one, it, you know, it came around to, you know, just being appreciative of everything and people and all of that. And in this one it was about him kind of like finding a, you know, another person to appreciate everything with. And of course it brings me to this kind of this thought process of appreciation. I mean, what's the point of it all other than just to appreciate what is? You know, because if when we die and, you know, over a period of time we're completely forgotten. I mean, yeah, our family remembers us, and you know, maybe our grandchildren or, you know, friends and whatnot, but once those generations pass on, do we, you know, we're not even don't even anything anymore. But yet, I mean, I say that, but yet at the same time it's like this moment is all there is, and this is the most important moment, and we're like experiencing it. And, you know, it's everything. You know, it's like we're kind of like we're nothing, but yet we're everything at the same time.
I think that with the verbiage that's in this book, there does come to mind a lot of random thoughts, because we're kind of trying to learn about love, about self-love, how important that is, and then life from different perspectives, and God being ourselves. You know, I struggle to find the God in myself and in the people around me. I think it's really fascinating. I mean, you know, Sandy talking about her body being here and her 6th or 7th chakra being way up on some other planet. That's, I mean, just thinking about the stretch of us. I remember when I used to quiz myself as to whether or not our spirit was inside our body or our body was inside our spirit. I'd gotten the idea that you know, our spirit encompassed our body, kind of like you were talking about the Oversoul, except you were talking about it with all of our different lives. And the more you try and think about all these things that you have learned. Oh, thank you.
Oh, no problem. You're fine.
That's really nice.
Of course. Sorry, continue. I just didn't hand that yet.
The more you try and iron out some of these things that you've been taught and that you know the people around you believe, like, you know, I think about how much I'd like to discuss some of this stuff with one of my brothers, but I already know that talk about circular, it'll circle back around to what we were taught growing up. And don't you believe that? And doesn't that let you know that it's not like this? And there was no Big Bang, and just all this stuff. And it's so valuable to me to be able to talk about these things with I just enjoy Jason's hair blowing in the wind or whatever is happening. You won't get COVID from me. Oh, I just really enjoy this. Thank you all for all that you share.
I think we're going to have to stay on this chapter for next week, because one of the things that it talks about in this chapter is how we, sometimes we look at our lives and we look at the things that we want, that we need, that we're tempting to manifest, and they're not showing up. And so we think that we're not manifesting. But one of the things that it points out is that we are always manifesting. Kind of like, when you're trying to make a decision, if you don't make a decision, you've already made your decision, sort of thing, like we're always manifesting. And so to me, that makes me think, is there another me on another planet somewhere else that has all the shit that I think that I want and need here, and I just happen to be manifesting it on the wrong plane, in the wrong dimension? That's possible. Who knows? That, like, we really don't know. And yes, it's totally a circular conversation, Lori. You're not going to get any answers here. You're just probably going to get a lot more confused, but that's okay, because we are expanding our minds as we have this conversation. We are expanding our minds, and hopefully we're helping other people expand their minds. And I mentioned, I think it was last week, I don't know, I'm on a lot of webinars, so but I think it was last week I mentioned that, no, I don't think that was here. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but anyway, I'll save that for next week, because I know that we're 10 minutes after the hour. We kind of need to somehow announce that we sort of go 10 after the hour to 10 after the hour instead of the top of the hour, in case people are logging in on the top of the hour and think we're not here. We just always seem to be about 10 minutes behind. But I love you guys, and I love the conversation, and I hope everybody has an awesome week.
Thank you all. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, so for those of you who are watching, if you want to find us in mindsetmasterycollective.com. That'll take you to our webpage now. And on that webpage, you'll find a link to get into our Facebook group. And then, of course, also show you where all the replays are for all of our previous videos. You can find those on our website as well. Find us on Facebook. That's where I put the links so that you can join us. And if you want to just get notified each time we upload a new video, then subscribe to our YouTube channel and it'll let you know. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.